Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
If you can't enjoy Caitlyn Clark playing basketball, we probably can't be friends. Also, is Alabama a basketball school now? And the Yankees need to give Juan Soto whatever he wants. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Monday night in women's college basketball, just about as star-studded as you could get. First, it was Caitlyn Clark and the number 1 Iowa Hawkeyes against Angel Reese and Haley Van Lith, and the number 3 LSU Tigers. Caitlyn Clark came out firing, came off a screen, took that first 28-footer, and it was bottoms. She was off and running 41-12-7. Iowa avenges a loss to LSU in the national title game last year, 94-87. Em Adler from the Next was in Albany for it, and this was an electric atmosphere. Caitlyn Clark set the tone early, but it wasn't just Caitlyn Clark in this one that got them the win.
Yeah, we talked about this, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, about the physicality of Iowa, that they could win in different ways. This was classic Caitlyn Clark era. Just looking at the score, how they shot the ball, how they were able to move, how much they got out in transition. But I think what you don't quite pick up from looking at the highlights, from looking at the score, is how much they battled on a possession-to-possession basis, how hard they made Anissa Morrow and Angel Reese work. These weren't just, the balls bounce in. Sometimes they bounce out. No, this was, you have Sydney Falter at 5'11". You have Kate Martin, who definitely is not taller than 6 foot. You have Gabby Marshall at 5'8". Really, really battling against Flau'jae Johnson, who's a very large 5'10", against Morrow and Reese, really keeping their stride there, even as Hayden Stuckey falls into foul trouble and they have to cycle through the posts. They got so much contribution from everyone on the roster that Caitlyn Clark obviously drops 41, and that is the story here. She is immaculate, but really top to bottom, this is a team that knows what it's doing. It has the chemistry, and it is firing on all cylinders in exactly the way they need to.
Yeah, and LSU did a good job early on, clogging the paint, taking away some of those split cuts and some of the cutting that they like to do down the lane. Caitlyn Clark kind of couldn't find her sea legs as a passer early on, but in the second half, it was just a masterclass. She was in control of everything. Here's the thing, for their excellent play, they get to go play UConn, who all they do is go to Final Fours. Paige Bueckers, who Gino Auriemma said was the best player in the women's game. I don't know, after watching her against USC, he might be right. All due respect to Caitlyn Clark, Paige Bueckers 28, including a couple decisive buckets down the stretch. They take down Juju Watkins and the number 1 seeded USC Trojans in an 80-73 absolute dandy of a game. And this UConn team had 3 players play every single minute, including Paige Bueckers. So how have they managed to do this with all of the injuries that they've faced this season?
There is so much that goes into that. There is how Ice Brady has come along from someone who Gino wanted to play early, but was kind of unplayable in the non-conference slate. There's how Ashlyn Shade's shot has been falling. There's how KK Arnold is probably the best player that, a casual listener probably doesn't know about. But I think the biggest thing it comes down to is how that game was tied, I believe, at around 4 minutes left. But the thing about UConn and the thing about Gino Auriemma as a coach and as a teacher is that his players always are going to have their heads on straight. The way that they execute down the stretch against USC in this last 2-3 minutes is the exact same way they're executing in a game that they are beating Marquette by in Madison, up 50 points in the middle of January. And you see with how USC is incredibly talented. It's 3 transfers in, grad transfers in from the Ivy League. It's a lot of really smart players, but it's so hard to execute, especially at this age, especially at this scene. And what UConn players does, I was going to say you just can't teach, but you can teach it somehow, and UConn finds a way.
Keep up all year long with women's basketball by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Women's Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, is Alabama a basketball school now? Before we answer that, Warren Sapp and Coach Prime are teaming up. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Gametime app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRST, P-I-T-C-H, for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hall of Fame defensive lineman Warren Sapp is headed back to the classroom in order to be more of a hands-on coach for the Colorado Buffaloes.
Warren Sapp will be joining as an analyst. So he'll be joining in the analyst position, which is better than, I think a lot of people were thinking that he'd be some sort of, I guess you could say, on-field coach or grad assistant, but he will be getting an analyst role with Colorado. So he's a senior analyst and gets an opportunity to coach for the first time. He has no coaching experience. He's obviously an NFL Hall of Famer, has quite a resume on him in terms of football accolades and stuff like that. You look at what he's done on the football field, and he's one of the best to ever do it.
A heartbreaking story in the NFL. Former NFL corner Vonte Davis was found dead Monday at a residence in South Florida, Davie police confirmed. He was 35. Police said the investigation remains active, but that preliminary information suggests foul play is not involved. The Broward County Office of Medical Examiner and Trauma Services said Monday that it could take up to 90 days to determine Davis's cause of death, pending a full examination and further testing. Davis made headlines in 2018 when, while playing for the Buffalo Bills, he abruptly retired at halftime of a September game against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Phoenix Suns had a chance to inch a little closer to the New Orleans Pelicans and a playoff spot instead of a play-in spot.
It's not from the first quarter either. It is another one from Book, which is early third quarter when he hits his 7-3 and then shortly thereafter hits his 8-3. It just, I mean, we can't do so much of waiting and not address it. So not only did he get to 7, which we know he's obviously done in the postseason, but he does one better and gets all the way to 8. And we'll get to it, I think, a little bit maybe to close out the show. I don't know, have some box score stuff to hit on, but I'll just say it here too. I think the fact that he was able to set the tone, him and KD both early, by taking threes. It might not be comfortable. It might be old news. People might be tired of hearing about it or talking about it or ripping their hair out about it, but it matters when this team emphasizes that. And for those two guys to get 27 of them up, it mattered for more than just all of us being able to finally see Book do this random thing. It was actually, I think, a big part of why they won.
And Spencer Steer's grand slam sent the Philadelphia faithful home angry as the Cincinnati Reds beat the Phillies in extras.
Spencer Steer sends him home happy in Philly. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast, and Spencer Steer destroyed a pitch from Connor Brogdon in the top of the 10th inning for his first career grand slam. Put the Reds up 6-2. Reds pitching got the job done all night long. Beautiful outing by Andrew Abbott. Started off shaky in the first inning, but he was able to rein it in. And then the bullpen was fantastic, including everybody's favorite worry, everybody's favorite heartburn, Alexis Diaz. 5 outs, 14 pitches to get him. He's back. And TJ Antone, maybe focusing in as well, gets the save. We're going to have a whole lot more on the next Locked On Reds podcast because the Reds got a shot at a series win in Philly. You betcha.
Nick Saban leaves Alabama, and all of a sudden they're a basketball school in the Final Four after taking care of North Carolina over the weekend as a 4 seed. The Crimson Tide now have to face the biggest test in men's college basketball, the number 1 seeded UConn Huskies, the best team in college basketball, probably full stop. Luke Robinson from Locked On Bama joins me now. And Luke, this Alabama team, this was someone our pal Chris Gordy from Locked On SEC flagged about midseason, like, hey, this is a team that has some pieces here. Why didn't they look like the version we've seen in the tournament for the balance of the regular season?
Well, they did for a while. There was a chunk there in the middle of the season where they were the SEC favorites to win the regular season, I think. But a couple of things happened. I think that, first of all, that very arduous schedule that they played in the non-conference caught up with their legs a little bit. They got tired. And I know that sounds like an excuse, but I think that schedule helped them very much in this tournament. They had to face a lot of adversity, and it's pretty well publicized. They didn't win a lot of those big games. In fact, I don't think they won any of the really big non-conference games. But they did go to Toronto to play Purdue. They played in Phoenix already. Now, not at the exact same location, but they played in Phoenix already against Arizona. They played at Creighton. I mean, that's one of the hardest places to play in the country right now. So then they had some injury issues. Just that some of that comes from fatigue. But Latrell Wrightsel's injury hurt as much as anything. This is a guy, if you look up his statistics, it says he averages about 9 points a game. That doesn't tell the story at all. He's an incredible 3-point shooter. I think he's 27 of 27 from the foul line this year, but he's missed a lot of games. And he's missed the last couple of games, really 2.5 games of the NCAA tournament. And Alabama's been able to persevere. They'll get him back, it looks like, for the UConn game. I mean, will that be enough? I mean, frankly, I think everybody will say no. And I get it. Alabama's going into this as a decided underdog. This is almost like UConn playing Alabama in football, just the roles reversed. I mean, but that's the way people are treating it. I mean, UConn is an 11.5 point favorite in a Final Four game. That's a large spread in a Final Four game. So
especially against a team that is not, an 11 seed, a 12 seed. Like, this is not when George Mason makes a Cinderella run to the Final Four. Alabama, a legitimate Power 5 conference team with legitimate Power 5 conference talent. Okay, so we understand this is David versus Goliath, and a position where Alabama is used to being Goliath, not David. How can they put together a stunner in this one? What is the recipe? What does the path look like?
And I know I sort of use the same analogy, but it's not really David Goliath. I think it's Goliath against David's bigger cousin, Brett.
Yeah,
Brett. Let's go Brett.
Okay, Brett. I like it.
But how do they make it happen? I mean, they've just got to be extraordinarily hot. Look, Jimmy Stein and I say this all the time, especially about football, but I think it's good throughout sports. Now, baseball may not be the same way because the season is just so deadgum long. But I think in basketball, especially in this tournament, you're trying to win 6 games, right? And you're going to play your best once, maybe twice. You're going to play your worst once, maybe twice. And really everything else in between is what you actually are. I don't know that we've still seen Alabama's best game because while, they beat North Carolina, there was a stretch in there where they didn't look very good in the first half. They were down 8 points at the half. And then they came out in the second half, and Grant Nelson just put on a show towards the end of the second half. Then against Clemson, look, Alabama was down 13 points to begin the game. I mean, really out of the gate. And they only had about a 3-point lead, if I remember rightly, at halftime. So it wasn't like they just owned Clemson the entire time. But what they've done, I should say, is that they have played a lot of different styles so far in this tournament. And they've played Grand Canyon, who just came out. Grand Canyon must have just seen Roadhouse. I mean, they just came out throwing punches and nobody was calling anything. And so be it. Sometimes the refs just let you play. Clemson is rough and tumble, but they also have some shooters. I don't think Grand Canyon got the shooters to stay with Alabama long term. College of Charleston, that was a mismatch from the jump. But then North Carolina, I think clearly North Carolina has more NBA talent than Alabama. They were Alabama, I think, had a little better chemistry. So I think Alabama's best game is still in the bag. The question is, will they pull it out for this Final Four contest against UConn? I mean, and don't worry about playing Purdue in the next round. Don't worry, or NC State. I mean, I guess that could happen too. But you just got to take care of business here. And I think the goal is come out there and just play your game. And if you get beat by 30, so what? UConn's beating everybody by 30.
Stay up to date on the Alabama Crimson Tide by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Bama on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Yankees need to just give Juan Soto whatever he wants. Whether you're at the ballpark or on your couch, get into all the action on the diamond with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Keeping an eye on the pitching matchup, looking for the home dog. FanDuel has all the ways to play this season. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on run lines, money lines, over-unders, and so much more. You can even combine prop bets on things like strikeouts and home runs to increase your payout. That seems fun. The Houston Astros look to follow up a no-hitter, and Framber Valdez is on the mound to help them do it. FanDuel has the Astros favored to beat the Blue Jays tonight on the money line, -158. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on baseball all season long. Five games does not a season make, but our Locked On Yankees host Stacey Getsoulias has seen enough. They want Hal Steinbrenner to give Juan Soto whatever he wants to remain a Yankee for the rest of his career.
I'm going to say this probably every show of this season. Hal, give him whatever he wants. I don't care how much it is. Give him anything he wants. I know it's only been 4 games, but I am enjoying every second of Juan Soto. He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. The franchise is worth nearly $8 billion. Give him whatever he wants. You know who else feels the same way? Phil Hughes. Phil Hughes tweeted after, I believe, Saturday's game saying, Hal, give him whatever he wants. And then he reiterated it after Sunday's game. Same thing. Juan Soto should be a lifelong Yankee, or from this point on till the end of his career. Yankees should be signing him until he's 40. They should. He's fantastic.
I'm old enough to remember, and it wasn't that long ago, that the Yankees were the evil empire. They were the team, the big money franchise that every medium and small market team knew. They knew they were going to lose their star player when they hit free agency, when they became prohibitively expensive, because the Yankees were going to move heaven and the Empire State Building to make it happen. But that's just not been the case. And frankly, that has not been the case for a long time in New York. We even went through this a little bit with Shohei Ohtani. Oh, he's going to be a Yankee. They're going to get out the checkbook, pay him whatever he wants. New York City, why wouldn't he want to do that? Now, there were extenuating circumstances. But that's not what the Yankees are anymore. It's not how they've operated. But now is the chance to at least tap into some of that history. Juan Soto is that level of player where you just say, whatever, here's the money. The Yankees print it. You want some with your face on it? We'll do it. And if they don't, then we'll really know that era, the Steinbrenner era, the Hank Steinbrenner era, not the Hal Steinbrenner era, is truly in the past, potentially for good. And finally, looking for a shiny gift for that special someone? Chances are you won't pay as much for it as someone did for a ring from the Los Angeles Lakers 2000 NBA title. This particular ring was gifted from Kobe Bryant
to his father, Joe Jellybean Bryant. It sold for $927,000, including buyer's premium with collectible marketplace Golden over the weekend. There were 43 bids for it, and the frenzy resulted in the highest price ever paid for an NBA championship ring. Someone must have really, really screwed up Valentine's Day, and I understand. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, the Knicks and Heat need a win for playoff seeding, but only one can get it tonight. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.